Well, hi, heck of a pleasure to meet you. My name's Ben. I'll be your tour guide today. Please know that as we start going through today, we purposely do this using Zoom's meetings instead of Zoom's webinar tools, so that if you do want to key up and ask a question or send a chat or whatever, please feel free to. Well, let's jump in. So today we're going to talk about and we're going to show the member registration experience from two different lenses. Lens number one is I'm a member, I'm logging in and registering for myself. I, Ben, am going to go to your event. Lens number two is I, Ben, am going to be registered by someone else to go to your event, right? So sort of both of those scenarios we talked to a moment ago. I want to, and while we're doing that, we'll talk a little bit about some of the control you have as to workflows. You can target with Engagifii different experiences, give different people different steps to follow, depending on who they are and what they're registering for. We're not going to be covering exhibitors today. We do have another webinar scheduled for next month where we'll be solely talking about exhibitors. It's a topic in itself. But just as a quick example, you can totally imagine that an exhibitor registering for a booth should be a very different experience than a registrant registering. And maybe even within your regular registrants, maybe you want some people to choose from bundles of selections, whereas other people you want to choose a la carte things and so on. And so we'll show you some of that stuff here today, but know that you've got a lot of control, and we're going to look at a couple of examples of that. And then we're going to flip the camera around a little bit and kind of think about, all right, we've seen this sort of from the member's point of view. We understand what our member sees. What does the admin see? What can the admin do? What sort of controls do I have there? Can I register people on their behalf? What sort of tools do I have to comprise the event with different registrable elements? How do I nest a class into an event so that someone doesn't have to go through registration twice and so on? Now, of course, we have member portals and mobile app stuff and different ways, different ingestion points that someone might get to the registration. This is just meant to be the public website analog of that. Out there on the public, in the public, I'm looking at your website and I click register now. So here I am looking at a login screen. So this is one of the fundamental differences of Engagifii with a lot of other registration systems and so on, is that typically your membership is to some degree a closed community. And one of the problems that we hear about a lot out there is that, there's duplicates in databases. People fill out a form. And if I say Ben Laughter today, but last year I said Benjamin Laughter, now you've got two records in the database. And it's because I'm not authenticating to get in. So what we require, what Engagifii requires, and we have ideas to do different things in the future on this, by the way, but what we're expecting is that the person who's choosing to register has a relationship with you and is in your database. Now, that's not necessarily a valid assumption for things like exhibitors and sponsors, right? But we're talking about participants today. So whenever that member logs in with their credentials, they are taken straight to the registration process for this particular event. Now, real quickly before we go through the registration, just to kind of tap back on Rose's question a minute ago, notice over here on the left-hand side, this member can now go manage their own profile. Or if they're an assistant, think of them as a local admin assistant, maybe if they're a county clerk or a school board secretary. I know different types of associations are in the house. But if they're that admin at your member organization who does stuff on behalf of other people in the organization, then they could go manage their roster of people or manage their own information, right? We've got a whole election terms system in place here. You could have those admins, for those of you who track elected people, Bob lost his election, Ben won the election, and so I'm going to go update those terms. If you're tracking legislation with an Engagifii, maybe this user wants to go in and see what bills you're tracking, what your commentary is on the bills. You can access control and provide visibility to or restrict visibility from all these different things, from their training records to their events. We don't want you to stop engaging with your customers, with your members, but we do want to help you get rid of these unnecessary phone calls. Hey, I need my training report. Okay, well, here's how you get it, member, right? You can go in now and do it yourself. What do you guys think about House Bill 123? Well, here's our analysis of it. Here's how you find it. So you're able to feed more information and stop those unnecessary phone calls so that you can do more high fidelity membership engagement. But our purpose today is this member wants to log in and register for this event, right? They might do other stuff when they're done, but they want to log in and register for this event. So here you can see I've got a few steps that I want to go through. First, I'm just going to validate, yeah, this looks like the event I want to go to. This budget workshop looks cool. I'm going to do that. Now, they're then given the opportunity to manage their profile as a part of registration. We transition customers over from things like MemberSuite or IMIS or gosh, there's so many others, Envise. Lots and lots of our competitors, worthy competitors, good companies, good products. But folks leave them, then they come to us sometimes. And when we bring them on, one of the biggest challenges that so many folks are facing is just data hygiene. I always ask a prospective new customer to rate your data on an A to F scale, right? And if they ever give me more than a D, they're probably lying to me. People really struggle with data cleanliness. Well, one of the ways that we can help you, that you can be helped, is by giving your members frequent opportunities to manage their data. So if I'm Aubrey here and I'm looking at my profile, oh, my address has changed. I can click edit and update that right now, or my email address, or my title, or what have you, right? If I need to manage my profile here, I can do that right here during the event registration without having to go hunt for it, without you having to remind me for it. Now, this particular event is a pretty simple one. It's a one-day event, pretty simple, little workshop, little budget workshop, and we're going to be serving lunch at that workshop. So which lunch option do I want? Right? Do I want this? Do I want that? Whatever. And notice how it's either or, right? And I want to do some improvement here to where this isn't truncated, but if it's grilled chicken or capers or whatever, I'm able to just choose the item that I want and move on with life. And then I'm being told, okay, here's how much money you'll owe me, which is zero. But I want you to imagine for a moment that this is $200, right, to go to this workshop. Well, how do you want that to be billed? Do you want to bill yourself? Is Aubrey herself being charged for this? Is she responsible? Or is the organization, is her member organization, her county, her school board, her city government, her whatever your member organization is that member organization being billed? That's typically the 99% with most of our clients, but you might differ a little bit. Okay, well, we know that Aubrey is a part of Bristow City. So here's Bristow City, and hit next, and we're done. So now Aubrey has registered for this event. She hits close. Now she's looking at a list of the rest of the upcoming events, and maybe she wants to go look at some tracked bills, whatever else she wants to do while she's here. Maybe she wants to go manage her profile beyond what she just did. Maybe she wants to look at her training report, see what certifications she's working on. So while she's in the platform, she might want to go do other stuff. No problem. She's permissioned to do exactly what you've permissioned her to do, nothing more than that. So that's sort of the perspective of a member going and registering herself on her own behalf, no admin assistant involved. Let me look over at the questions real quickly here and see if there's anything. I want to ask Garrett. It was Garrett, right? Okay, Garrett, I'm sorry. I think I might have misattributed your question a minute ago to Rose. But hopefully the authentication part answers the restrict to email addresses question. Your relationships database, the people and the organizations that you're managing, that relationships database is controlled by you to where you can invite people or not, right? So you might have people that you're tracking that you choose not to invite, and that's okay. But they won't be able to register until such time that they are invited to have a user profile within the platform.
So as a follow-up question to that, is there any way, so let's say we're starting off fresh. We've never used your system before. Is there any way to simply restrict registrations to individuals that have a specific email address?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. So number one, I mentioned registration workflows a minute ago, but if you could imagine it this way, when you click the register button, the platform's going to ask two questions. Who are you and what are you registering for? Now you're able to create these registration workflows to answer different combinations of that. So that what sort of organization are you with, Garrett? Give me some framework here.
So we represent the offices of the state attorney throughout the state of Florida.
Okay. All right. So let's say you've got are the DAs, or who are your members?
All the assistant state attorneys throughout the state, anybody who works in their office. So like you'll have, say, like sa15.org or sao8.org, things like that.
Okay. So you'll be able to designate permission sets, roles, person types. There's different ways of sort of segmenting people within the database part of Engagify. And what you're basically able to do is say, for this segment of people, use this workflow. For this segment of people, use that workflow for this given event. You might say, this segment of work of people can't register for this event. In the accreditation stuff, you can even, we have this concept of visibility. So you might have classes, be they online, on demand, in person, webinars like this, whatever. You've got classes and you can actually physically hide them from view, so that someone in region 1 can't see it at all because they're in region 1. This is a region 2 workshop. So there's a couple of different ways of spinning the cat. Spinning the cat's nicer than skinning the cat, so I'm going to go with that. But anyway, there's a couple different ways of going about it, and I think we can probably satisfy your need, but we'd want to dig it into it more detail to make sure we're not missing a nuance there. Oh, and a bunch more questions. Let me real quickly look at those before we jump into the admin view. I'm sorry, the member admin view. Does the system automatically ask them to update their profile during the registration process? It does. Showed you that. That's step 2. And I'll show it to you again here from the admin assistant point of view, Peggy. I think you'll dig that. Problem with collections. Oh, nice. Is there a way that we can modify the workflow so the payment has to be made before the registration for the event is complete? Yes. Simple question, simple answer. Yes. See, that's Nicole responding. Can you address non-members? Do you have a particular question you want to ask there, Peggy, as to how non-members might be addressed, might need to be addressed? And I guess, are we talking about members of the general public who you don't know? Or are you talking about known non-members? Like this is an organization that could be a member of ours that we have in our database that we've invited and all that stuff. They're not yet a dues paying member. How are you defining non-member?
Yes. Hi, Ben.
Hey.
So I work with a hospital association for Colorado.
Okay.
So non-members would be like different healthcare organizations that aren't hospitals. So we do offer a non-member like registration fee. But as far as them logging into the system, my question would be, does the system determine if they're members or non-members, and would that be via their email?
So if they already exist in the platform, so there's a 2-part answer that I don't know is going to fully satisfy you here, and it might be worthy of a follow-on one-on-one conversation. But I'll show you a different login screen to a different workspace real quickly here. We do have this option of enabling. You have the option of enabling whether someone can create their own profile, right? Now, when someone from the general public, an unknown quantity, goes to create their own profile, then you're setting a very specific set of rules as to what a newly created person can do until such time that you've had an opportunity to triage them and sort of assign them where they need to be, right? Now, if that person already exists inside of Engagify, if that email address, which that's what we use to deduplicate, if that email address already exists inside of Engagify, then we will not allow the duplication of the record. We'll tell them, hey, this already exists. Do you need to reset your password? Right? And that way they can go ahead and get logged in. And by the way, there's a lot of there are a lot of instances where you might have a new person coming into yours, but they already exist in someone else's Engagify instance. And I'll give you an example. We serve in a few different states, both the School Boards Association as well as the School Superintendents Association. We serve in a few states the county governor or the county commissioners association, as well as some of the county governments themselves. So if I'm a member of that county government, if I work at the county government, that's where my W-2 comes from, and I'm registering into my county's Engagify workspace because I'm part of the policy team and I need to track legislation and do stuff. But I'm also a member of the county commissioner association. Then when I log into Engagify, it knows, hey, you exist in 2 places. Which one are you logging into today? Right? So you might have some folks who fit that need. They might work for a hospital association as well as they might be a member of the hospital association, but also a member of the doctors association, right? Or the anesthesiologist association or whatever, right? And so they might exist in 2 different places. And what we always want to do is make sure that you don't have a duplicate and that they don't have to have multiple usernames and passwords. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
Uh,
does.
Groovy.
Thank you.
I hope it was a good answer. Let's see here. So I was going to ask another poll here. Before I jump in and do the admin assistant version, I am curious real quickly about the sorts of types of events you all do. When we talk to our customers and help them with stuff, and I've worked at and been involved in some of these conferences as well, as has Sharon and Monique and Nicole on our call here. We've helped our customers at events because we want to be there on the ground learning about some of the real problems you all face. So I've told Mako in the past, I'm your slave for all of Tuesday, right? Let me work the registration desk and just abuse me. So been there, done that. It's hard work. I get it. But it's harder work at an annual conference than it is, say, a monthly workshop or a webinar. And so always curious to know what types of events folks are doing. And we typically find that most folks have a smattering of each, but there's a lot of emphasis on the 1 or 2 annual conferences, winter conference, summer conference, or just the one big one. Partially because it's such a big revenue driver. I've heard different percentage splits, but event revenue is a significant amount of non-dues revenue for most of our association clients. And so looks like annual conference is kind of the biggie here. I'll share those results too. But most of you doing online stuff. That's interesting and good. I think it's more and more important to have online options. Quick side note for our training stuff, we've actually built an integration with a tool you may or may not be aware of called Talent LMS. It's like pre-record your content, put it online, stage it out into coursework, and then people can go in and take it at their own pace. And then you grant credit for that. And so we've built an integration there to where you can combine the registration all with an Engagifii, and we'll just automatically report back the credit so that they can earn whatever certifications they need. Online is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I think this internet thing might take off. Okay, so what am I doing here? I am logging in as this admin assistant person. Oh, you know what? I didn't have a step turned on. Sharon, would you do me a solid real quickly and turn on the step for Anthony's role here that includes the choose people? I thought we had that and I must have messed it up. I would really appreciate it. Just let me know when to hit refresh. But the key difference here, as Sharon helps me out with that, the key difference here is that the member that we were a moment ago, Aubrey, when she logged in and registered, she registered herself. Now, let's say Aubrey's too darn important to do all that stuff. She's got fancy golf matches to shoot with fancy people, and so she cannot be bothered to register herself for an event. And so she's sending poor Anthony over here to do it for her. Have we got that done yet, Sharon?
Hold on 1 second, Ben.
Okay.
I'm sending you.
Okay, no worries. So the idea here is, though, and this isn't restricted to only registering for an event. It might be registering for that webinar, registering for that class. It might be pulling training records for last fiscal year. It might be updating their information. I mentioned term management earlier. It might be updating that they lost an election or won an election. A really popular use case for that is school board members. There's a lot of transition from election to election cycle in school boards. And so imagine just giving the school board secretary the ability to say, these 3 members lost their elections. These are the 3 new members that are coming in. These are the 7 more that are retaining their seats. And so that's kind of how we go about managing terms.
Refresh.
Hit refresh. Refreshing. Still don't have it.
Right.
Sorry, guys. I had looked at this earlier and I must have farted it up.
No, I sent you on Zoom a different user that.
Oh, okay. One sec.
Both of them. Sorry, I don't know who your Mr. Anthony is, so it took me a minute to find him.
I don't think I see it. So should I refresh Mr. Anthony here, or should I find another one that you've got?
I sent it on the Zoom chat.
I don't see it, Sharon. Oh, here it is. All right, guys, 1 sec. I'm just going to log in as a different person. It does reinforce the point, though, that we made earlier, that you can have different experiences targeted at different folks. Different people can do different things because of how you might decide to configure the platform. So let's look here. This was the summer budget workshop, and I'm going to click register. So I'm going to register a group of people for this workshop as opposed to myself, right? Because that's the role that I'm inhabiting right now. So you'll notice a new step here that wasn't there for Aubrey. Choose participants. Now, Aubrey works for a very specific organization, Westgate City. So she's able to select from any of the people within Westgate City that she wants to. Notably, she cannot choose from outside her own organization. Now, you as an administrator can choose anyone from any organization, but she's controlled to her own. And then, if you think about this as a funnel, you can do anything across any organization. This person can do anything across one organization. The Aubrey person, the member, can only do one thing across her own profile within that one organization, right? So tighter and tighter controls as you go down that permissioning funnel. But here I'm saying that these 3 people are going to go to this workshop, same workshop. And now I'm given the option to update 3 sets of information. And let's say that you just created a new custom field that's mandatory. I don't know, gosh, let me think. Let's say that your state and your industry and your world, we've seen this before, for whatever reason, requires you to track demographic information, diversity information. And you need to track things like age, race, gender. You might create new custom fields, and now that it's mandated by the state, you need to gather that information from everybody. So if you just created a whole bunch of new fields and made them mandatory and put them on these people's profiles, then when our person here, Beverly, gets to this point, she's going to see there's empty mandatory information that she's compelled to fill out right now as part of this registration. So you're gathering the information incrementally as part of your registration process. Okay, well, here's my lunch options. Similar to before, but I've got 3 people now. Let's see, I want this person wants this person wants this person wants that, right? So I'm just making different selections on their behalves as this member organization admin leader person. And then the rest of it's going to feel really familiar. Here's your list of stuff that you've chosen. Do you want to bill yourself or the organization? This is the organization. Hit next. Now, what's super cool is that even though this is sort of opaque to the member who just did this work, is that for you, the operations of your association, the registration has been completed. If this were a paid class or a paid event, the invoice has already been generated. And because you have a billing contact on file for Westgate City back in the relationships database, that billing contact has already received an email with one invoice that has these 3 people on it and what they registered for and the dollar amount. Now,
one other thing to mention, Ben, is we've used the lunch here on this simple workshop, but imagine that was different sessions and you had, thinking we work with the Georgia State Board of Workers Comp, and you've got an insurance adjuster training at 9, and you have a rehabilitation services at 9, and you're registering different people for different sessions. And you could go through and pick which sessions you want and build each person's agenda as you're registering them. So it can be a lot more complex than what we had set up for today's purposes.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you some of that complexity when we switch over to our internal staff administrator point of view. But I wanted to start because, we're in the business of member engagement and supporting our members doing good stuff, right? Bar none, I think all of your members are in some way or another trying to help society, and right, you're trying to help them do that work, and we're trying to help you do that work of helping them do that work. So, we want to make it easier for you to do meaningful, high-touch work with them, as opposed to, having to print out a list of attendees and walk across the hallway to accounting and say, could you please bill these people? That's boring. No one wants to do that. Let that stuff happen automatically with this sorts of tools. So now that person's done, and they might do all the same stuff that we talked about with Aubrey a minute ago, but notably they might do it on behalf of their organization. So they might go to their organization, and I don't know who all's in here because I only got these credentials a moment ago, but in the people tab here, she might go in and update, ooh, this person lost that election, or, Clifton, changed positions, or, Alice got married, her last name has changed, I'm going to go update her profile. Right. So now there's all this other stuff that you might empower Beverly to go do on behalf of her roster of people within the confines of her organization. So that, like with the accounting stuff, you don't have to do the boring work of chasing down information and maintaining the database. Let your member admins do a lot of that work for you. So Sophia just wrote a nice little scenario here. An admin assistant registering 4 people, but only 3 exist in the system. Is there an opportunity for an option to create a record for that missing 4th person? Absolutely. So I'm not sure if we have this enabled in here, but what I can describe it to you. I can describe it to you regardless. So let me get back to the workshop that we were at. I'm going to register that group of people and just get back to that step. Okay, I don't have it enabled on this particular workspace, Sophia, but what we have is a blue button that you can decide to turn on or not right here that empowers this assistant to be able to add someone at this moment on the fly and create them in the database, relate them to this Westgate City account, right? This organization, and then to add them to the invoice all in one shot without them having to do any kind of back and forth with you. That said, it's worth pointing out that you might want governance over that sort of stuff. So we have this concept of approval workflows as well as registration workflows. What you've seen so far is registration. But you might, like if someone's in the relationship database and they add a new person, or if they make a substantive change to someone's record, like they change someone's last name because they got married, you might want to approve or deny or revise and approve those requests as opposed to just allowing members, right, to make those changes. We don't want to encourage the Wild West, but we don't want you to have to do all the work yourself is the key point. Good question. And I like being able to say yes. You betcha, Sophia. Okay, let's flip the script a little bit here. I'm going to go to a whole different workspace and look at things. Actually, we'll look at this one first, and then I'm going to go to a whole different workspace to show you a little bit of behind the scenes of what an administrator can do. So now I'm logged in as a full-on administrator. First thing you might notice is on the left-hand side, I've got visibility to more things, right? I can go in and find new bills and track them. I can compare different versions of bills. I can look at all my invoices and transactions. I can record a payment batch because I've just got a stack of checks. I can send an email out to my database. I can, create new people. I can go look at who all's coming up for re-election this year. I can go look at my list of classes, create next month's workshop, et cetera, right? So now the handcuffs are off. I can do anything I want. So when I go look at that exact same event from the perspective now of an internal administrator, I can register myself. I can register other people on their behalf. But like I mentioned earlier, you're not restricted to one organization. You can register anyone from any organization. Same thing, just with a search function. I can edit the attributes of this bad boy. I can decide whether guest registration is allowed on this event. I can set maximums. I can decide what the registration dates are so that they're automated. Idea being, you might be creating this event that's going to be happening in July, right? Let's see when this one is. Yeah, July. But I'm going to allow registration starting Monday, February 24th, all the way through July 18th. So this is going to turn itself on and turn itself off like an old TiVo. It'll allow registrations until it stops allowing registrations, right? And it's just automated, set it and forget it. You can do the same thing with pricing, where you can set up date-based pricing. So you might say that from February 24th to March 30th is early bird, and then it's standard beyond that until July 15th, and then it's late registration, and set 3 different prices for 3 different cohorts of people. Maybe non-members pay more than members, right? Maybe region 3, because we don't like those guys, pay more than region 2 because we do like those guys. Whatever. Maybe anesthesiologists have to pay more, right? They'll be numb to it. That was a joke. That was a good one. All right. So I'm able to go through and manage the details of my event here, but I want you to think about an event as comprised of 3 major elements. Question, Michelle, does it integrate with QuickBooks? Some yes, some no, and some coming. First off, QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop? I'm going to answer both ways because different folks at different strokes might be in the room here. But for you specifically, QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop? So number 1.
Desktop.
Desktop, awesome. So QuickBooks Desktop requires what's called an IIF file. We have completed product strategy and currently in the process of building an IIF exporter. It's a really weird file format. I hope you're probably familiar with it, but it's not a standard Excel file. And so it's this weird 2-layer, 2-tab thingamabob. And we figured it out. We know what to do. And we are building it now. It'll be out sometime in the next few months. I don't have an exact date for you yet. But that will allow you to download a ready for upload deal. Now, the reason we aren't doing a direct integration, like a live integration, a connected integration with QuickBooks Desktop is because Intuit is trying to phase out QuickBooks Desktop. And I know there's a lot of resistance out there, but they're trying to do it. And sooner or later, they're going to do it. And so we don't want to invest the time and capital in building an integration to something that's going away. And B, it would require what's called middleware. Because it's a locally hosted desktop application, you'd have to have another application running on your computer. And that just adds a point of complexity and failure that we weren't interested in introducing to the scenario. So instead, what I want to give you is the ability to say, for this date range, for this month, for this year, for this week, for this event, give me all of the transactions in a ready to import format so that I don't have to manipulate anything in Excel. So that's the QuickBooks Desktop answer. Within the next month to 2 months, we are releasing a QuickBooks Online integration that is automated. So a minute ago, I mentioned that when we registered these people, the invoices were automatically generated, right? So I've got invoices here for those registrations we just did. Here's the one with Aubrey. Here's the one with Vincent and Catherine. So those invoices have been generated and sent to their billing contact. Our QuickBooks Online integration is also going to take the extra step of creating that companion invoice in QuickBooks. It'll even go further than that. When you satisfy this invoice with a payment or a credit note with an Engagifii, it's going to sync that over as well. So that whole walk across the hall, to have accounting do stuff, that should all get automated if you're just using Engagifii as sort of the system of record there.
That's music to my ears. Thank you.
You betcha. Are you thinking about moving to QuickBooks Online, or are you just happy about the IIF?
Well, I am now.
Okay. That's awesome. Well, there's one more interesting thing about that too. So you have within the event, let me think here. How do I want to show you this? Yeah. So back on my events page here, let me jump over real quickly here. Sorry, I don't mean to digress, guys, but this is really important. Events, like I mentioned earlier, events revenue is such a massive part of your non-dues revenue category of dollars and bills. And so one of the things that's a fundamental part of both the export that I mentioned, as well as the live integration, is that I can go in and define the revenue accounts that will be attributed to the dollars generated from those event sales, right? So if I decide that all of my revenue from the events registration itself is going to go to this account, and if I do cancellation fees to this account, if I do modification fees to this account, and maybe it's different for a class within an event, maybe it's the same, right? Maybe I copy it all down, or maybe I make a different definition. This particular class is a really special class, so it needs to go to this account, right? So the nuts and bolts of it is, if there are dollars booked against any of these elements of the event, then that invoice is now attributing those dollars when it gets transmitted over to QuickBooks to the appropriate chart of accounts account.
Oh,
right?
That's amazing.
Need us begin? Cool. Well, that's in the platform today as a fundamental thing that we're looking forward to harnessing heavily with that integration.
Okay.
So I'm glad you like it. Okay, as an admin, great questions, guys. Great questions. So here I'm looking at my event, and it's, I mentioned a minute ago, it's comprised of sort of 3 main things. The days of the event, this one's simple. It's a 1-day event. The sessions within the event, it might be different lunch options. It might be keynote address, local interest tour, local food receptions, whatever, right? It could be all kinds of stuff that are sessions. But then you might also have classes within the event too that are actual, like official training sessions. So you can take all those items and bundle them together into saleable packages. And as an example to this, I want you to think about, you're going to McDonald's, right? So you go to McDonald's, what do you want? You want some sort of sandwich, some sort of drink, and fries, right? That's what you're there for. But you're not going to walk up to the counter and say, give me a sandwich, give me fries, and give me a drink. You're going to say, give me a number 3 meal, give me a number 5 meal, give me a number 4 meal, right? So what you're able to do is take the elements of the event. So this one's a little more complex. This is a 3-day event. And you'll notice how all 3 of these days are happening at the same location. Hey, it might be that that 3rd day is a golf tournament, right? And it's happening at a different location. Okay, it might be that the day 0 is a pre-conference workshop for only board presidents or what have you, that's happening at yet another location. So you're able to define the days. They don't necessarily have to be consecutive, though likely they will. And they don't have to be at the same location. They can be in different places. And then take those days and any classes you might be teaching within the event. So imagine your core curriculum of classes that you're teaching. So I'm going to try to come up with a couple of examples here. If you are a school board association, you're probably teaching new board member orientation. You're probably teaching school board governance, ethics, diversity, all kinds of stuff. And I'm sorry, guys, my test workspaces sometimes do funky stuff to me. But you'll have a bunch of classes that maybe you've embedded into this event. And the thing we don't want the user to have to do at the end of the day is have them go register individually for all these items, right? We want them to go through one registration process where they say, I want to go to the reception and I want to take these 5 classes, right? Or maybe it's, I can only be there Monday and Tuesday. I can't be there Wednesday. So I don't want to pay for all 3 days. I only want to pay for Monday, Tuesday. So you might arrange things to where, like I have here, date-based. I forgot to label Friday properly. You might also just, you know what, I'll do it real fast just so you can sort of see how this is built. This is number 4. You're saying here that of all the elements that comprise this event, I only want to put Friday in. I only want to put the classes that are in Friday, and I only want to put the Friday sessions in, right? So I've created a sandwich and a side and a drink of specifically those elements that now when someone registers for this particular event, they can choose between Happy Meals, right? They can choose between bundles. So I'll show you what that looks like from an admin perspective registering. So here I'm registering and I'm able to, again, choose anyone from any organization. You'll notice a mixture here. Let's say I want to look for Carson City Government. Mike and Soren are going to come here to this particular event. Notice how I could search across any organization. I can update their information just like the member admin could. But now, instead of choose your classes, choose your sessions, it's choose your bundle. It's which Happy Meal do you want? So here, I want the full conference. That includes all days, classes, and sessions, or only Wednesday, only Thursday, only Friday. Well, I want to see the details of that. What classes, what sessions are in that? Right? So you might have 30 classes and carve them up however you want and section them up. We see folks do this in sort of a role-based, right? You know, here's the, gosh, I don't know. I was just talking to a general contractor association yesterday. So they've got foremen, they've got trainers, they've got QA people, they've got, you know, forklift drivers. And so they might have a different set of bundles options that are sort of role-based. Here's the forklift drivers class set, right? So you're going to come to classes on all 3 days, but only the forklift classes. And so you're able to take these elements and bundle them together however the heck you want to. And people can make selections and say, I want to be there Wednesday and Thursday. I can't be there Friday. Or Soren Kierkegaard is going to be there all days. And you're able to price the bundles to incentivize the behavior you want. So this guy's going to pay $300 for 2 days. He could have just paid $375 to be there the whole time, right? So you can configure all that stuff however you want. And then again, review and submit. And because you're a global administrator, you can bill anybody you want. So because this is Carson City, I'm just going to bill Carson City. And then you could choose to pay them later. Or I've skipped over this a couple of times. I don't have a credit card processor hooked up to this workspace right now. But if you have Stripe, PayPal, Authorize.net, gosh, am I forgetting one? Stripe, PayPal, Authorize.net. Maybe it is just those 3. But we have payment processors connected so that you can, you know, accept credit cards as well, instead of having to send invoices. Now, of course, that will still create a paid receipt, a paid invoice, and send it to that billing contact and that registrant. But dunzo. Now, Elmer Fudd here is the billing contact we have on file for Carson City. And so that we hope that he does his job well. We all know Elmer. He's a bit problematic. But I've registered, and now I've got those people who are registered to that event into those bundles. So what's super cool is that when I go look at my participants now of everybody that's been registered to this thing, and I go look at Mike, and I see the 2 bundles that he registered for, I can see everything that he's registered into, right? I can even, like, he's registered for this class called Voices of Leadership. If I go to that class, then I can see him there in that participant list as well. That way, the instructor who's teaching that class can mark attendance and say, Mike was there. And because Mike was there, if that class is worth 3 credit hours in your accreditation program, if that's worth 3 credit hours, then the way we built Engagifii is that attendance in the class will grant course credit toward any awards. So if you've got certifications, awards, endorsements, whatever your word for it is, level 1, 2, 3, 4 professional. And let's say level 1 takes 25 credit hours, 2 is 50, 3 is 75, 4 is 100. Then you don't have to do the manual work of reconciling who's got what training and how much is it worth and so on. That will all manage itself. And I can show you a couple of examples of that if you'd like, but you're able to think of it as trickle up training information toward awards in the same way that when you take a required class in college, that counts as part of that core course, that required course, which counts toward your degree program, as opposed to an elective or something completely unrelated that maybe doesn't count toward your degree program. You're able to map these things together the way a university does and automate all that trickle up of credit reporting so that all you have to do is mark attendance, and then everything else takes care of itself. And then on everybody's profiles, if I go to Mike's profile here, and I look at his events and training, I'm able to see all the awards that he's registered into, how much he's done of it, what's he still got to do, and if there are available classes right now for him to register to, I can register him to him, or he can register himself. That's stuff that you can make available to him to do for himself. See all the credits that he's earned, all the classes he's been to, all the events he's been to, including the one we just registered him into. Let's take a look back at the chat. Is there an opportunity to ask registrants questions during the registration process, like dietary restrictions? Very, very soon. That is Peggy asking. I'm half tempted to show you the mock-ups of this. We've done prototypes for this. It is ready for development. We're finishing up on some of this revenue accounting related stuff first, but this is very high in the pecking order of next thing to do. Is the ability to ask registration questions. And the reason we've taken a minute to get there is because we wanted to do it smartly. Kind of going back to the beginning, you've got exhibitors, you've got members, you've got non-members, and then within any of those, you've got affiliates, you've got partners, you've got sponsors, you've got all these different segments of people, and then within them, you might have sub-segments. And so we wanted to build registration and questions in a way that's very targetable. So you might have 10, 12 questions in total that you're asking, but you only want to ask exhibitors these 3 questions, and you only want to ask members those 4 questions. You want to ask non-members 5 questions. And so instead of giving everyone the same generic form to answer where half the questions are irrelevant to them, you'll be able to target those questions. So when I'm going through my registration as a member, I see member questions. When you're going through your registration as an exhibitor, you see exhibitor questions, and so on. So we've done a lot of cool work on that. It's going to be super cool. Coming out this year, I don't have an exact date for you, but that is, it's high on the list of things that we want to get into dev next. It's a big list though. Guys, we released over 80 things last year. We're already, I think, 12 in this year. We've got 2 deployments scheduled for the next couple of weeks. This thing moves fast. Are we able to make changes to registrations selections post-submission? Yeah. So an example of that might be, I mentioned earlier that you have the ability to approve changes to profiles as an approval workflow there. And so if I go in here and change my title or my name or whatever, if I make a change, instead of my secondary profession being a real estate investor, I'm a mall Santa, right? You'll get a notification that says, hey, Mike went in and updated his profile. Mike will see pending approval on that submission. And then you can review those and approve them or decline them as you see fit. You'll have similar governance over responses to questions. Let's see here. Okay, groovy. All right. Real quickly, what questions do we have, folks, so far? Are we doing okay? Anything jumping out at you that we haven't touched on? Because I did want to talk a little bit about special pricing as a key component here that I think you might dig.
Hey, Ben, it's
Yes,
Carol
ma'am.
here at
Carol.
TCSA. I had put it in the chat, but when I'm registering as as an admin for the system, and I'm registering multiple people, but they come up at a certain pricing, is there an easy way as I'm registering them to override a price?
Not yet. I really want to do that. I really, really want to do that. I'm working right now on a new dues and subscriptions, dues and services module that will allow you to create kind of like we have events here that are purchasable, dues products that are purchasable, services products that are purchasable. And I'm building into that the concept of inline price override during sale, right? That while I'm saying that Washington City is going to sign up to this dues package, while I'm doing that I can override that $12,000 to make it $10,000. Once I've built the tech there for the inline override, I want to adapt it everywhere else.
I have a question. If you know beforehand who you're going to need to override, could you put them in a group and have group pricing?
So that's what I was going to show, and it's a great question, Carol, that is relevant here in a sort of sideways way. You can set special pricing. You just can't override that pricing inline during registration is the problem. That's what I want to make an improvement to. But one of the really powerful things that I glossed over here when we were talking about the relationships aspect of things is that I've got these automated groups of people who meet some criteria. Now, in my case, I've also got some of them synced with Constant Contact so that if I get new board members, my Constant Contact mailing list is automatically updated. If I lose board members, then it's automatically updated too. These are all criteria driven, right? So if their current position includes board member, then they go into this group. If it isn't, then they don't. So automated groups for messaging, for all kinds of purposes, but generally your quantification, reporting, and communications. But another big use for groups, and it's not the only use for groups here, but another big use for groups is that in your events and in your classes, if I want to set a special price for the board members group, then I can do it. And I'll show you a couple of cool things here. And let's say, what's another group that I've got? How about clerks? And I've got another group here called clerks. And then we talked about Mike Katz. Let's say Mike is, teacher of the year or whatever, and he gets to go to everything for free. So I've got sort of three cohorts here. I've got Mike as an individual, I've got all my clerks, and I've got all my board members. And let's just say that my event generically costs about $500 to go to. Well, I'm going to say that because you're a board member, it's $450. You get a discount. Because you're a clerk, I'm gonna set up date-based pricing here and say, early bird versus standard versus late. And I won't fill all this out, but you get the idea here. Maybe this is 400, maybe this is 500, maybe this is $1 million, right? Whatever. But I can incentivize and penalize however I want. I'll go back to a simple mode here, and let's say that these guys pay $550, right? And then, overridden price greater than 0. They got confused because I went to date-based pricing. But I've got one cohort that's doing one price, one cohort that's doing another. And then I said, Mike gets to go for free. But the eagle-eyed among you will ask the question, what if Mike is also a board member? Is he paying this price or is he paying 0? Well, depends on the order. If I put Mike on top, then this sort of works sequentially. Whenever someone registers, like I answered Garrett earlier, whenever someone registers, it asks a couple of questions. Who are you and what are you registering for? Part of the who are you answer is, do you have a special price attached to you? Have we planned on a special price for you? And if so, I'm going to execute that. And so it's going to work its way down the list. Are you Mike Katz? No. Are you a board member? No. Are you a clerk? No. Okay, standard price then. But if yes anywhere down the line there, then they pay that price. So you might have in any given group registration of 3 people, 3 different prices because they meet different group criteria, right? Kind of cool stuff. Here's the answer to that poll we popped up a minute ago. It looks like most of you guys do between 6 and 10, but wow, those of you who do 20 plus, I don't know if I want to congratulate you or offer commiserations because that's a lot of work. Events are hard work, dude. Okay, with 3 minutes remaining, I think that's what I was hoping to cover here today, folks. Open for any more questions. I am interested to get some feedback here as to sort of what you saw today that might be the most important to you, what you're most excited about, and of course, most especially if there's stuff that we didn't cover that you saw that's like there's a glaring missing where you're going to go back to someone in your organization and say, Engagify looks cool, but it doesn't have X. Man, I want to know what X is, so that we can, always be listening and reacting to that sort of stuff. New question in here from Michelle. We have an access database table we've been using since 2012. Can that be integrated? We wouldn't integrate it, kind of like with the member clicks thing earlier, we'd replace it. So we have lots of customers who do that too, who are either working in Access or Microsoft Dynamics or even spreadsheets right now, who will come to us. And it's just a process of data cleanup and migration that we want to get you out of that old Access database into a modern system that allows you to do some of the other cool stuff you've seen. And frankly, you don't want to be fragmented. You don't want to have 2 databases to keep reconciled. That's a pain. You want to have one that you trust. And we'd love to be it if we're not already.
I don't want to keep it, but it has a history for us of registrants. And so that, and a lot of, a lot of them are still our members. And that's why I was wondering if we could somehow integrate the information that's in there for the history part of it as well.
Yeah, I just wouldn't use the word integrate because that implies that they're going to, in an ongoing way, live together.
Oh yeah, no, I don't want that.
I would say migrate.
Migrate. Right? There you go. That's what I meant to say.
And I'll be honest, for anyone here who isn't a current customer, right? We onboard people constantly, right? We always have new customers coming on board, and we're excited about it. But the hardest part of the work is the data migration. I mentioned earlier the A through F thing. If you think you've got an A, look at it again. You probably don't. If you do, kudos, because you're a very rare person. Most people really struggle with data management. And so we'll work long and hard with you to help you clean up your data before we move it over, because it's like moving house. You don't want to move junk from basement to basement. You don't want to move junk from system to system either, right? So it's worth taking the time during a migration to really clean it up and make it good. Great. Any other questions, folks? You've been a really engaged group. I really appreciate all the great questions. QuickBooks Online to be very interested in the QBO integration. Happy to be included in the beta testing. Cool. Thanks, Sue. Appreciate it. I'm not sure if we're going to do a public beta of it or not. But like I say, this is one of our next releases. So I didn't see which organization you're with, Sue. So if you're not already an Engagify customer, by the time you go live, it'll probably already be in the platform. If you are an Engagify customer, then you should be receiving an update email from me. I also posted on LinkedIn the other day an update of all of our recent releases. Because we had the webinar invite, we didn't send the email out this time, but you'll get one in the next couple of days of a lot of our most recent releases. If you're getting those emails, then you'll get one about QuickBooks integration very soon.
And how do we, I might have missed it. I was reading your poll, but how do we get in touch with you to see about getting this program and how much it costs and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, no worries. And of course, there's 1,000 more things to talk about, Michelle, before I would ever recommend it to you, right? We've got to make sure we're a good fit for you and learn a lot more about the organization. But with all that said, Sharon on our team here, who you've heard her voice a couple times, is one of our major players when it comes to how we help get new customers on board and onboard them. We don't have salespeople. So what I'll ask Sharon to make contact with you after the fact and start that ball rolling. You'll me again soon. I handle all of our demos, but again, we don't employ salespeople. The job is to figure out if there's a good fit and consult one another until we decide whether there's a partnership to be had.
Excellent. Perfect.
Cool. So Sharon, homework, Michelle, thank you.
Sharon, you're my new best friend.
Michelle, Sharon, Michelle. Carol, how cool to see you. Tell the TCSA folks and Coke guys that I love them. Great. Well,
I'll do that, Ben. I was just talking to Ben Rogers last week, and he said they were still in the process of learning. So
yeah. Well, Ben's a slow learner, you know that
yeah,
guy.
well, but we finished our first conference through here, and it went pretty smoothly. So I appreciate that.
Excellent. There's always growing pains, but we're happy to be serving you guys. Really proud of the TCSA group, and I think Code's going to be great as well. So thank you again for your partnership.
Sure.
All right. Well, folks, if there's nothing else, then I'm done yapping at you. And yes, Peggy, there will be a copy of the recording going out in a day or so here.
I did want to mention, Ben, that in a month from now, we're going to do a webinar on just exhibitors and exhibitor registration and booth assignments and booth preferences. And I'll send something out about that because it's been mentioned earlier. That's a whole hour talking about sponsors and exhibitors. So speakers also.
Absolutely.
Oh, awesome. Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. Again, awesome, fantastic interactions today. It's always so boring talking to a room that doesn't want to talk back. So really appreciate everyone's interaction and great questions. So got a couple contact things up on the screen here. So please feel free to reach out to us if you want to follow up with anything else.